I'm the richest farmer in the region, and the loneliest. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, same as I have for the past 45 years, and the first thing I notice is the silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes from contentment, but the heavy, oppressive silence that reminds me I'm completely alone in a 6-bedroom house built for a family I never had. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free, and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. My hand reaches across the bed out of habit, though there's never been anyone there to reach for. The other side is pristine, the pillows perfectly fluffed, the sheets unrumpled. It looks like a display in a furniture store, not like a bed where two people share their lives. I'm 66 years old and I've slept alone every single night of my life. That fact sits in my chest like a stone. I swing my legs out of bed and my knees protest. Everything hurts these days in a way it didn't even 5 years ago. My doctor says it's my heart that's the real problem, that the tests show concerning things, that I need to slow down and reduce stress and make lifestyle changes. He asked me about my support system, about who was helping me manage my health, and I had to tell him there's nobody. He looked at me with that particular kind of pity that medical professionals have perfected, that look that says they've seen this before, lonely old men dying alone, and it's sad but there's nothing they can do about it. He gave me prescriptions and pamphlets about heart-healthy living and told me to come back in 3 months. He didn't say how many 3-month checkups I had left, but I could see it in his eyes. Not many. Maybe a few years if I'm lucky. Maybe less. I get dressed in the dark, pulling on the same kind of clothes I've worn for decades. Jeans, flannel shirt, work boots. I look in the mirror and see an old man looking back, face weathered from 45 years in the sun, hair more grey than brown, lines etched deep around my eyes and mouth. I used to be handsome, I think. Women used to look at me with interest. But that was a long time ago, before I let work consume every part of my life, before I became this dried-up old bachelor that people pity and avoid in equal measure. I'm the richest man in 3 counties and one of the loneliest men on earth. That's my legacy. My name is Daniel Hartley, and I own the largest farming operation in this part of the state. 6,000 acres of prime farmland, 3,000 head of cattle, the most modern equipment and facilities money can buy. I gross several $1 million a year in profit. Every other farmer in the region knows my name, studies my methods, envies my success. Agricultural magazines have done features on my operation. I've been invited to speak at conferences about sustainable farming and efficient land management. By every external measure, I'm successful beyond what most people ever dream of achieving, and I would trade it all, every single acre and every single dollar, for what my neighbors have. A wife sleeping next to them, children who call on Sundays, grandchildren who visit for holidays. But you can't trade for those things. You either build them or you don't, and I didn't. I didn't inherit this farm. I built it from almost nothing, which makes the success feel even more hollow somehow. I grew up poor, the son of a tenant farmer who worked other people's land his whole life and died at 52, with nothing to show for it except calluses and a broken back. I was 21 when my father died, working alongside him on a farm we didn't own, earning barely enough to survive. I swore at his funeral that I wouldn't end up like him, that I'd own my own land, that I'd build something that mattered. I got a job at a local farm, saved every penny, lived in a trailer that didn't have heat or running water, ate 1 meal a day. After 5 years of that, I had enough to put a down payment on a small 100-acre plot that nobody else wanted because the soil was poor and the land was rocky. I was 26 years old when I bought that first 100 acres, and I worked like a man possessed to make it productive. I'd be out in the fields before sunrise and wouldn't come in until well after dark. I read every book I could find about soil management and crop rotation. I took out loans to buy better equipment. I reinvested every penny of profit back into the land, and slowly, painfully, acre by acre, I built something. By the time I was 30, I had 300 acres. By 35, I had 1,000. By 40, I had 2,000. And I kept going, kept buying, kept expanding, kept working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, until now at 66, I have 6,000 acres and more money than I know what to do with. But somewhere along the way, while I was building this empire, life passed me by. I missed everything that makes life worth living because I was too busy working. I never dated in my 20s because I was too poor and too focused on saving money. I never dated in my 30s because I was building the farm and didn't have time. I never dated in my 40s because by then I didn't know how, had been alone so long that the idea of letting someone into my life felt impossible. And now I'm 66 and I've never had a girlfriend. I've never kissed a woman. I've never made love. I'm a 66-year-old virgin, which would be funny if it wasn't so pathetically sad. I make coffee in my huge empty kitchen, the kind of kitchen that's designed for a family, with a big island and double ovens and a breakfast nook that seats 8. I built this house 15 years ago, designing it with the vague idea that someday I might have a family to fill it. But that someday never came, and now I rattle around in here like a ghost, haunting my own life. I sit at the kitchen table that seats 8, and I'm the only one here. I've been the only one here for 15 years. Sometimes I set out extra plates just to make it feel less empty, but that's even more depressing, so I stopped. The sun is starting to rise as I drink my coffee, painting the fields outside my window in shades of gold and orange. It's beautiful. I've seen this view thousands of times and it never gets old. 6,000 acres of land that I own, that I built from nothing, stretching out as far as I can see. This should make me happy. This should make me proud. But instead, all I can think is, what was the point? What was any of it for? When I die, probably in the next few years, all of this goes away. I don't have children to pass it to. I don't have a wife who'll inherit it. I don't even have close friends who'd want it. It'll be sold off to some corporation or divided up among distant cousins I've never met. 3 generations of potential Hartley legacy, and it ends with me. A lonely old man who chose acres over family and is dying alone as punishment for that choice. There were women over the years. Not many, but some. Women who showed interest, who tried to get to know me, who might have become something if I'd let them. I remember each one with painful clarity now, though at the time I barely noticed them, too focused on work to see what was right in front of me. The first one I remember was Sarah Mitchell. I was 28, had just bought my first 100 acres, was working myself to death trying to make it productive. She worked at the feed store in town. Pretty girl with dark hair and a bright smile, always friendly when I came in. One day she asked if I'd like to get dinner sometime. I was so surprised I didn't know what to say. A woman was asking me out? Me, the poor farmer with the rocky land and the broken-down truck? I should have said yes. God, I should have said yes. But instead I mumbled something about being too busy, about having too much work, and I saw her face fall. She never asked again. I'd see her at the feed store after that, and she'd be polite but distant, and eventually she married someone else and moved away. I barely thought about it at the time. I had a farm to build. I had land to clear and soil to amend and fences to build. I didn't have time for romance. I remember the exact day Sarah asked me out. It was a Thursday in late spring, I know, because I was buying seed for the summer planting. The feed store was quiet. Just me and Sarah and old Mr. Peterson, who owned the place but was mostly retired by then. I was loading 50-pound bags of seed onto my cart, doing the math in my head about how much I could afford, and Sarah came over to help me. She didn't have to. There were other customers she could have been helping, but she chose to come help me. We talked while we loaded the seed, small talk about the weather and planting season, and then she asked if I had dinner plans. Just like that, casual and friendly, but I could see the nervousness in her eyes, could see that she was taking a chance asking me. And I froze. I stood there with a bag of seed in my hands and my mind went completely blank. All I could think about was the work waiting for me at home, the fences I needed to mend, the irrigation system I needed to fix, the 1,000 tasks that never ended. So I said no, said I was too busy, said maybe some other time, knowing there wouldn't be another time. And I watched her smile fade, watched her nod and say okay and walk away, and I went back to loading my seed like nothing had happened. I saw Sarah at the feed store probably 50 more times over the next few years. She was always professional, always polite but never friendly like she'd been before, never lingered to chat, never smiled that bright smile, just rang up my purchases and sent me on my way. About 3 years after she asked me out, I came in one day and she wasn't there. I asked Mr. Peterson where she was and he said she'd gotten married to some guy from the next county over, some teacher at the high school, and they'd moved away. He said it like it was good news, like he was happy for her, and I mumbled congratulations even though she wasn't there to hear it. And then I bought my supplies and left and told myself it didn't matter, that I'd made the right choice focusing on the farm. But sometimes late at night I'd think about Sarah and wonder what my life would be like if I'd said yes to that dinner. Would we have fallen in love? Would we have gotten married? Would I have children now, a family, someone to share my success with? I'll never know because I chose seed bags over dinner with a woman who liked me. The second woman was Jennifer Blake when I was 35. By then I had 300 acres and was starting to be seen as successful rather than just another struggling farmer. Jennifer was a teacher at the local elementary school, blonde and sweet-voiced, and we met at a community meeting about water rights. The meeting was boring, full of bureaucrats and lawyers talking about regulations and permits, but Jennifer sat next to me and made it bearable. She'd lean over and whisper funny comments about the speakers, little jokes that made me smile despite myself. After the meeting ended, we stood outside talking for probably an hour. She asked about my farm and actually seemed interested in my answers. She told me about her job teaching 3rd grade, about her students and their funny quirks. She had this way of talking that was animated and joyful, her hands moving constantly, her face so expressive. I found myself completely captivated, more engaged in conversation than I'd been in years. When we finally said goodbye, she pulled a piece of paper from her purse and wrote her phone number on it. She handed it to me and said, "You should call me sometime. I'd love to hear more about your farming operation." She said it with a little smile that suggested she was interested in more than just farming talk, and I felt something flutter in my chest, something I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. Hope, maybe, possibility. I put the number in my wallet and said I'd definitely call. I meant it when I said it. I fully intended to call her. But when I got home that night, there was a problem with the irrigation system, and I had to stay up until 3 in the morning fixing it. The next day I was exhausted and there was more work to be done. The day after that, one of my few cows at the time got sick and I had to deal with the vet. Days turned into weeks and I kept telling myself I'd call Jennifer soon, just as soon as things calmed down. But things never calmed down on a farm. There was always another crisis, another task, another reason to put it off. I still have that piece of paper. It's in my wallet right now, 31 years later, faded and creased and barely legible. I don't know why I kept it all these years. Maybe as a reminder of my failure, maybe as evidence that at least once in my life a woman was interested in me. I took it out last week and looked at it, tried to read the phone number that's almost completely faded, and I wondered if Jennifer remembers me. Probably not. I was just some farmer she talked to at a boring community meeting 3 decades ago. She's moved on with her life, married that banker, had those 4 kids, probably has grandkids now. She's probably happy and fulfilled and doesn't spend any time thinking about the lonely farmer who never called. But I think about her. I think about that phone number I never dialed and how different my life could have been if I'd just made a simple phone call. About a year after I got Jennifer's number, I saw her at another community meeting. I'd finally gotten around to thinking I should call her, was actually planning to do it that week, and there she was. I walked over to say hi, to apologize for not calling sooner, to ask if maybe we could get that coffee she'd mentioned. But before I could say anything, a man walked up and put his arm around her waist. She introduced him as her fiancé, this guy named Robert who worked at the bank downtown. They'd met 6 months ago, she said, were getting married in the spring. She was radiant with happiness, clearly deeply in love, and I stood there with my stupid apology dying on my lips. I congratulated them and said something about being happy for her, and then I left the meeting early because I couldn't stand to be there anymore. I drove home and threw her phone number away, then immediately dug it back out of the trash because I couldn't quite let it go. That was the moment I realized I'd made a terrible mistake, that I'd let something real slip through my fingers because I was too focused on work. But even that realization wasn't enough to change my behavior. I just went back to working 18-hour days, burying my regret under exhaustion and productivity. The third woman, and this is the one that haunts me most, was Rachel Anderson. I was 42, established and successful, well known in the region. Rachel was 38, a widow whose husband had died in a farming accident 3 years earlier. She owned a small farm next to one of my properties, about 200 acres that she was struggling to manage alone. We'd see each other at auctions and farm bureau meetings, and she was always kind to me, always smiled, always seemed happy to talk. She had this warmth about her that I'd rarely encountered in my isolated life, a genuine interest in people that made everyone around her feel valued. One day in early summer, Rachel came to my farm looking for help. She was having problems with her irrigation system and didn't know how to fix it. I spent the afternoon with her, walking her fields, examining the equipment, figuring out what was wrong. It was a simple fix in the end, a clogged valve that took maybe 20 minutes to clear. But we spent 3 hours together, and I found myself not wanting to leave. We talked about everything, about farming and weather and the community. She told me about her late husband, about how much she missed him, but how she was learning to be okay on her own. She asked about me, about why I wasn't married, and I gave her the standard answer about being too busy with the farm. She looked at me with these knowing eyes and said, "Daniel, there's more to life than work." I learned that the hard way when John died. All the time we spent working, we should have spent living. When we finished with the irrigation system, Rachel invited me to stay for dinner. She said she'd made pot roast that morning, had made too much, and it would be a shame to let it go to waste. I knew what she was really offering. This wasn't just about pot roast or not wanting food to go to waste. This was her way of saying she was interested, that she wanted to spend more time with me, that maybe something could develop between us, and I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to say yes. Standing there in her field with the sun setting behind us, looking at this kind, warm woman who was inviting me into her life, every part of me wanted to accept. But I panicked. I thought about my schedule, about the work waiting for me at home, about the Morrison property that was about to go on the market and the negotiations I needed to prepare for. I thought about how complicated a relationship would be, how much time and emotional energy it would require, how it would interfere with my carefully structured life of work and more work. So I thanked her, but said I needed to get back to my farm, that I had evening chores waiting. I saw the disappointment in her eyes, saw her smile fade just a little, but she nodded and said she understood. She walked me to my truck and thanked me for helping with the irrigation, and I drove away telling myself I'd made the right choice, that there would be other opportunities, that I needed to focus on business right now. I never went back to Rachel's farm. I'd see her occasionally at farm bureau meetings, and we'd be cordial, professional, but the warmth was gone. She'd offered me something real, and I'd rejected it, and she wasn't going to offer twice. About 6 months after the irrigation incident, I heard through the grapevine that Rachel was dating someone, a man from the next county who owned a small ranch. A year after that, I heard they'd gotten married. 2 years after that, I heard she'd sold her farm and moved to Colorado with her new husband to be closer to his grown kids. And I stayed here alone, having successfully expanded from 3,000 to 4,000 acres, by buying the Morrison property, having successfully destroyed any chance at happiness by choosing land over love. That pot roast dinner invitation haunts me more than anything else in my life. It was the clearest, most obvious opportunity for connection that I've ever had, and I walked away from it. Rachel was perfect for me in every way that mattered. She understood farm life, had been through loss and come out stronger, was ready for a new relationship, and she was interested in me specifically. All I had to do was say yes to dinner, sit at her table, eat her food, and let the evening unfold naturally. Maybe we would have just become friends. Maybe we would have discovered we weren't compatible. But maybe, probably, we would have fallen in love. We would have merged our farms, worked together, built a life together. I'd have a wife now. Maybe we would have had kids in those early years when we were both still young enough. At the very least, I'd have had 24 years of companionship, of partnership, of someone to share my life with. But I chose to go home to an empty house and work on spreadsheets for a property acquisition instead. I think about Rachel constantly. More than Sarah, more than Jennifer. Rachel is the one who keeps me up at night. Because she wasn't just some missed opportunity from my youth when I was poor and struggling. She came along when I was 42, established, financially secure, old enough to know better. And I still chose wrong. I still prioritized business over human connection. If I couldn't choose correctly at 42 with a kind, compatible woman literally inviting me to dinner, then I was truly broken in some fundamental way. And I am. 45 years of putting work first had calcified into my personality so completely that I couldn't choose differently even when I wanted to, even when every part of me was screaming to say yes. Sometimes I look up Rachel on social media, which is pathetic for a 66-year-old man, but I do it anyway. She looks happy in her photos. She and her husband have a nice ranch in Colorado, surrounded by mountains. They go hiking and fishing and take trips to visit his grandchildren. They look like a couple who genuinely enjoys each other's company, who built a good life together, and I'm glad for her. I really am. She deserves happiness after losing her first husband so young. But God, it hurts to see what I could have had. Those could have been my photos. That could have been my wife smiling at me from across the camera. Those could have been my step-grandchildren that we visit. That could have been my life if I'd just said yes to a simple pot roast dinner 24 years ago. Those are the three I remember most vividly, but there were others. So many others that I barely registered at the time, but now remember with painful clarity. There was Michelle from the bank who always seemed to take extra time with my transactions, who'd ask about my week and actually listen to the answers. There was the veterinarian, Dr. Susan Martinez, who came to check on my cattle and always seemed to arrive right around lunchtime, who'd mentioned she hadn't eaten yet in a way that felt like she was hoping I'd invite her in. There was the woman at church, I can't even remember her name now, who invited me to the church potluck 3 times, and I declined each time because I had work to do. There was the real estate agent, who helped me buy several properties over the years, who'd suggest we celebrate successful closings with dinner, and I'd always say I was too busy. There was the accountant who did my taxes, a divorced woman about my age, who made comments about being free on weekends if I ever wanted company. I said no to all of them, not always explicitly, but through my actions, my unavailability, my laser focus on work to the exclusion of everything else. I built walls around myself so high and so thick that nobody could get through, and then I wonder why I'm alone. The truth is, I trained people to leave me alone. I trained women not to show interest in me because interest was never reciprocated. I trained my community that Daniel Hartley wasn't interested in socializing or connecting or being part of anything except his farm. And now at 66, when I finally understand how wrong I was, when I finally want connection and companionship and love, it's too late. The women are all married or moved away or too smart to waste their time on an emotional cripple who doesn't know how to have a relationship. I finish my coffee and head outside to start the day's work. I employ 12 people full-time on the farm now, good workers who handle most of the day-to-day operations. I don't need to work like I used to. Don't need to be out in the fields 14 hours a day. But what else would I do? Sit in my empty house and watch TV? Drive into town and wander around the stores alone? Work is all I know, all I've ever known. It's my identity, my purpose, the only thing that makes me feel like I matter. Even though I know now that it's meaningless, that work without love is just a way to kill time until time kills you, I keep doing it because I don't know how to do anything else. My foreman, Jack, is already at the main barn when I get there. He's 55, been working for me for 20 years, knows the operation almost as well as I do. He's a good man, married with 3 grown kids and 5 grandkids. Sometimes he talks about them, about his grandson's baseball games or his granddaughter's school play, and I listen and nod and feel this aching emptiness in my chest. That's what life looks like when you do it right. That's what I gave up when I chose 6,000 acres over human connection. Jack treats me with respect, but also with a certain wariness, like he's never quite sure what to make of me. I pay him well, treat him fairly, but we're not friends. We don't socialize outside of work. He goes home to his family every night, and I go home to my empty house, and that's how it's been for 20 years. This morning he mentions that his daughter is having another baby, his 6th grandchild, due in about 2 months. He's excited. You can hear it in his voice, even though he's trying to stay professional. He asks if I want to see pictures from the baby shower they had last weekend. I say sure, and he shows me photos on his phone of his whole family gathered together, smiling and laughing, celebrating new life. There's his wife of 35 years, his 3 kids with their spouses, his 5 grandkids with another on the way. Multiple generations of family all there because Jack and his wife built something real. I look at those photos and I feel like I've been punched in the stomach. This is what I don't have. This is what I'll never have. This room full of people who love each other, who gather to celebrate, who are connected by bonds stronger than business or profit or land ownership. Jack has this. Tom Wilson down the road has this. Half my neighbors have this. Even people who struggle financially, who barely make ends meet, they have this. And I don't. I have 6,000 acres and millions of dollars and nothing else. I hand Jack's phone back and congratulate him on the upcoming grandchild, and we move on to discussing the day's work, but I can't focus. All I can think about is that photo, that room full of family, and how empty my life is in comparison. We review the day's tasks, discuss some issues with the irrigation system in the north field, plan the rotation schedule for the cattle. It's all routine, all things I could do in my sleep at this point. Jack handles most of it anyway. He doesn't really need me here. Nobody needs me here. I'm just taking up space, killing time, pretending my presence matters. After Jack heads off to coordinate the work crews, I walk out to the south pasture, 3,000 head of cattle grazing peacefully, each one worth a small fortune. This is success, I tell myself. This is what I worked for. But it feels hollow, feels meaningless, feels like I'm looking at someone else's achievement rather than my own. I remember when I bought my first 10 head of cattle, how excited I was, how proud. I'd saved for 2 years to afford them, and when they were delivered to my small 100-acre plot, I felt like I'd really made it, like I was a real farmer finally. I called my mother that night, the only family I had left after my father died, and told her about the cattle. She was happy for me, but she also said something I didn't understand at the time. She said, "Danny, don't let this farm be all you have. Your father did that and he died a lonely man. Build something, yes, but also build a life. Find a good woman, have some kids, make some memories that don't involve dirt and cattle." I told her I would, that I had plenty of time for that I needed to get the farm established first. She died 3 years later, never got to see me succeed, never got to meet any grandchildren because I never gave her any. My mother's death was the second funeral where I stood dry-eyed and told myself I was being strong. The first was my father's. I was 21 when he died, too young to really process what death meant, too focused on survival to grieve properly. But when my mother died, I was 31, old enough to understand loss, old enough to know I was losing the last person who truly loved me, and I still didn't cry. I stood at her grave and I felt numb, felt nothing, and I told myself it was because I was strong like my father had taught me to be. But it wasn't strength. It was emotional shutdown. It was the result of a decade of putting feelings aside to focus on work. I'd trained myself not to feel, and by the time my mother died, I'd gotten so good at it that I couldn't feel even when I wanted to. At her funeral, there weren't many people. My mother had been a quiet woman, had spent most of her life taking care of my father and then living alone after he died. But the people who came all had stories about her kindness, about little things she'd done for them, about how she'd always had a smile and a kind word. And I realized I barely knew my own mother. I'd been so focused on the farm, on building my empire, that I'd barely visited her in the last few years of her life. Maybe once a month, always brief visits because I had to get back to work. We'd talk on the phone occasionally, but I was always distracted, always thinking about what I needed to do next. And now she was gone, and I'd never get those years back, never get a chance to really know her as an adult, never get to repay her for all the love she'd given me when I was a child. After her funeral, I went back to her small house to clean it out. She'd been renting a tiny 2-bedroom place in town, living on my father's meager life insurance and the small checks I'd send her occasionally. The house was neat and clean but sparse, not much furniture, not many possessions. In her bedroom, I found a photo album full of pictures of me as a child. Me at 5 years old with a gap-toothed smile, me at 10 helping my father in the fields, me at 15 looking awkward in church clothes. Me at high school graduation looking serious and determined. But there were no recent photos. Nothing from my 20s or 30s. It was like I'd stopped existing for her after high school, or more accurately, like I'd stopped visiting enough for there to be any new photos. That album broke something in me. Seeing all those childhood pictures, seeing the love and care she'd put into preserving those memories, and realizing I'd basically abandoned her in her final years because I was too busy building a farm. I sat on her bed holding that album, and I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. The tears wouldn't come. I'd shut down too completely. I took the album home with me, and it's in my living room now, on the coffee table that nobody ever sits near because nobody ever visits. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I'll look through it and try to remember who that little boy was, what he was like before work and isolation turned him into this. I'll look at photos of my mother and father when they were young, before poverty and hard work wore them down, and I'll try to understand how we ended up here. 3 generations of heartly men who chose work over life, who built farms but not families, who died lonely and were quickly forgotten. The afternoon stretches long and hot, typical for this time of year. I spend it checking on various parts of the operation, talking to workers, making notes about things that need attention. It's busy work mostly, things that Jack and the crew could handle without me, but it fills the hours and keeps me from thinking too much. Around 5 o'clock, the day shift ends and the workers head home to their families. I watch them load into their trucks, laughing and talking, making plans for the evening. Some of them wave goodbye to me and I wave back, and then they're gone and I'm alone again. I drive back to the main house, this enormous structure that was supposed to be filled with life, but instead just echoes with emptiness. I designed it myself 15 years ago, worked with an architect to create exactly what I wanted. 6 bedrooms because I imagined having multiple kids, maybe guests visiting, a full house. A huge kitchen because I imagined family dinners and holiday meals with everyone gathered around. A large living room with a fireplace because I imagined cozy winter evenings with a wife and children. A home office because I imagined teaching a son or daughter about farm management. A game room because I imagined grandkids coming to visit. Every room was designed with a family in mind, with a life in mind, with love in mind. And every room sits empty because I never built that family, never created that life, never found that love. The construction of this house was probably the moment I should have realized how wrong my priorities were. I was 51 years old, successful beyond my wildest dreams, and I was building a 6-bedroom house for myself alone. The architect kept asking about my family, kept asking if I wanted to modify the plans for a single occupant, and I kept insisting on the full-size family home. I told him I might get married eventually, might have a family, wanted to be prepared. He looked at me skeptically but did what I asked. The contractor thought I was crazy. The workers building it would make jokes about the rich bachelor building his dream house for a family that didn't exist. And they were right to laugh. It was crazy. I was 51 years old and hadn't dated in decades, hadn't shown any inclination toward relationships, and I was building a house for a family I had no intention of actually creating. But I couldn't admit that to myself at the time. Building this big family house let me pretend I was still open to the possibility, still young enough for it to happen, still had time. It let me lie to myself for another few years about what my life actually was. And now at 66, living in this monument to self-delusion, I can't escape the truth. This house was never going to have a family. I was never going to get married or have kids. I was always going to end up alone. I just refused to admit it, until it was far too late to do anything about it. I make myself dinner, something simple from the freezer that I heat up in the microwave. I eat it standing at the kitchen counter, looking out the window at my land, stretching into the distance. 6,000 acres, millions of dollars in assets, awards and recognition from agricultural organizations, respect from every farmer in the region, and nobody to share any of it with. Nobody who cares if I eat dinner standing up or sitting down or not at all. Nobody who'd notice if I didn't come home tonight. I could die right here in this kitchen, and it might be days before anyone found me, before Jack came looking when I didn't show up for work. That's not a life. That's just existence. Just marking time until time runs out. The evening drags on with nothing to fill it. I try watching TV but can't focus on any program. I try reading, but the words blur together. I end up just sitting on my couch in my enormous living room, staring at the fireplace that's never been lit, because who lights a fire when you're alone? I think about all the evenings I've spent this way, thousands of them over the decades, just sitting alone waiting for bedtime. I think about what other people do with their evenings. They have dinner with their families, they help kids with homework, they watch shows together and discuss them, they play games, they plan weekends and vacations, they live. And I just sit here alone, waiting for another day to end so I can start another day just like it. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free, and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. The phone rings around 8 o'clock, startling me. It's Jack calling about a problem with one of the water pumps in the East Field. I tell him I'll handle it in the morning, that it can wait. After we hang up, I realize that was the only human interaction I'll have all day that wasn't work-related. Jack called about a pump. That's the sum total of my social life. People calling me about farm equipment. There's something profoundly sad about that, about a life so empty that a phone call about a broken pump is the highlight of your evening. I go to bed at 9 because there's nothing else to do. I lie in my king-size bed that's too big for one person, and I think about all the women I rejected or ignored, or drove away with my emotional unavailability. I think about Sarah at the feed store, and Jennifer the teacher, and Rachel with her pot roast dinner. I think about all the other women whose names I never learned, who showed interest that I deflected, who might have been willing to build a life with me if I'd been willing to build a life with them. But I wasn't willing. I was too busy building a farm. And now I'm 66 with a bad heart and probably a few years left if I'm lucky, and I've never experienced any of the things that make life worth living. I've never been in love. I've never had my heart broken by someone who mattered. I've never had sex. I've never held my own child. I've never had a partner to share my successes and failures with. I've never built a life, just a farm, and those are not the same thing at all. The farm is just land and animals and equipment. A life is connection and love and family and memories with people who matter. I built one but not the other, and now it's too late to fix it. Sleep doesn't come easily. It never does anymore. I lie awake for hours, my mind racing through decades of mistakes and missed opportunities. The doctor's words keep echoing. Problems with my heart, need to reduce stress. A few years if I'm lucky. I'm going to die soon, probably alone in this house, probably found days later by Jack or one of the workers. There won't be a wife crying at my bedside. There won't be children holding my hand. There won't be grandchildren asking questions about my life. There will just be an old man dying alone exactly as he lived, in a house too big and a life too small. Around 2 in the morning I give up on sleep and go downstairs to make tea. The house is dark and silent, just me and my thoughts. I stand in my kitchen looking out at my empire lit by moonlight, and I feel this overwhelming sense of waste. All of this. Everything I built, it's all meaningless without someone to share it with. If I'd married Sarah, even though we were both poor at the time, we could have built this together. It would have taken longer, we wouldn't have 6,000 acres, but maybe we'd have 3,000 or 4,000 and a family to go with it. If I'd called Jennifer, we could have had a partnership, a life together, someone to come home to after long days of work. If I'd said yes to Rachel's dinner invitation, we could have merged our farms and our lives, could have had maybe a decade or more of companionship before my health started failing. But I chose none of those paths. I chose isolation and work, and the relentless pursuit of more land, more cattle, more success. And for what? So I can die alone surrounded by assets that will be sold off to strangers. So I can have the biggest farm in the region and the emptiest house. So I can prove that you can work yourself to death and still fail at life. That's my legacy. That's what I built. An empire of nothing. The next morning comes too soon and too slowly at the same time. I wake at 4:30 to the same empty house, the same crushing loneliness, the same realization that nothing has changed and nothing will change. I go through my morning routine like a robot, coffee and breakfast, and preparing for another day of meaningless work. My chest hurts this morning, a sharp pain that makes me catch my breath. The heart problems are getting worse. I should call the doctor, but what's the point? He'll run tests and confirm what I already know. I'm dying. And then he'll ask again about my support system, and I'll have to admit again that I don't have one, and he'll give me that pitying look that makes me want to scream. I head out to the barn, where Jack is already waiting. He takes one look at me and asks if I'm okay, says I look pale. I lie and say I'm fine, just didn't sleep well. He doesn't look convinced, but he doesn't push. We review the day's work, and I try to focus, but my mind keeps wandering. I keep thinking about that photo on Jack's phone, that room full of family, that baby shower celebrating new life. That's what I don't have. That's what I'll never have. That's what I sacrificed for 6,000 acres that will be sold to the highest bidder when I die. Around mid-morning, I'm walking through the south pasture when the chest pain hits again, worse this time. I have to stop and lean against a fence post, waiting for it to pass. My breath comes short and my left arm tingles, and I wonder if this is it. If I'm having a heart attack right now. Part of me hopes I am, hopes it'll be quick, hopes I'll just fall down dead right here and it'll be over. No more loneliness, no more regret, no more living with the consequences of 45 years of terrible choices. But the pain passes after a few minutes, and I'm still standing, still alive, still have to face however many days or months or years I have left. I make it back to the barn where Jack is overseeing some equipment maintenance. I tell him I'm heading back to the house, that I'm not feeling great. He offers to drive me, but I say no, I can drive myself. On the way back, I pass Tom Wilson's place and see his truck full of grandkids again, all of them laughing and happy, heading somewhere together. Tom waves and I wave back, and I feel this surge of jealousy so strong it almost makes me sick. That should be me. That could have been me. But it's not and never will be, because I chose wrong every single day for 45 years. Back at the house, I lie down on the couch in the living room, too tired to make it upstairs to bed. The chest pain has faded to a dull ache, but I feel exhausted, completely drained. I close my eyes and try to rest, but all I can see are the faces of the women I rejected. Sarah asking me to dinner and me saying no. Jennifer giving me her phone number that I never called. Rachel inviting me to pot roast and me driving away. Each one a chance at a different life. Each one an opportunity I destroyed through fear and workaholism and emotional unavailability. I must fall asleep, because when I wake up, it's dark outside. I've slept through the entire afternoon and evening, something I haven't done in decades. My phone has several missed calls from Jack, probably wondering where I am, why I haven't checked in. I call him back and tell him I wasn't feeling well, took a long nap, that I'm fine now. He asks again if I need anything, and I say no, knowing that what I need can't be provided by an employee calling out of obligation. What I need is family. What I need is love. What I need is to go back 45 years and make different choices. And none of that is possible. I heat up some soup for dinner and eat it at the kitchen table, sitting in my usual spot with the other 7 chairs empty around me. This table has never been full, never had 8 people gathered around it sharing a meal. It's just been me, alone, every single dinner for 15 years. Sometimes I try to imagine what it would be like to have the table full, to have a wife and kids and maybe their families gathered around. What would we talk about? What stories would we tell? What memories would we make? But I can't really imagine it because I have no frame of reference. I don't know what family dinners are like beyond what I see in movies or remember dimly from my childhood before my father died. And now I never will know, because I made sure I'd never have a family to have dinners with. After dinner, I wander through my 6-bedroom house, turning on lights as I go. Each room is perfect, professionally decorated, clean and unused. The guest bedrooms that have never had guests, the game room with a pool table and dartboard that have never been played with, the home office with expensive furniture and equipment where I manage my farm alone. The master bathroom with a jacuzzi tub I've never used because what's the point of a romantic bath when you're alone? Every room a monument to might have been, to the family that should have been here, to the life I should have lived. I end up in what I designed as the nursery, though I never explicitly called it that. It's a bedroom on the 2nd floor with good light and a nice view. When the architect asked what I wanted this room for, I said maybe a child's room someday. He gave me that skeptical look again, but designed it accordingly, with built-in shelving perfect for toys and books. A window seat for reading, space for a crib, and changing table. 15 years later, it's completely empty. Not even furniture in it. Just an empty room that was supposed to be filled with a child that never existed. I sit on the floor in that empty room, and I finally let myself really feel the weight of what I've done. I stole grandchildren from my mother. I stole great-grandchildren from myself. I ended my family line through selfishness and fear. And there's no fixing it now. I'm too old, too sick, too damaged. This room will stay empty. My house will stay empty. My life will stay empty until I die. The next few days pass in a blur of work and pain and regret. My heart is definitely getting worse. The chest pain comes more frequently. The shortness of breath is more pronounced. I'm taking all my medications, but they're barely helping anymore. I should go to the doctor, but I don't. What's the point? He'll tell me what I already know. I'm dying and I'm going to die alone. I don't need a medical professional to confirm that. Jack notices I'm declining. He's been with me long enough to read the signs. He starts suggesting I hire more help, take a step back from the day-to-day operations, rest more. He doesn't say it explicitly, but I can tell he's worried I'm going to drop dead while working. And maybe I will. Maybe that's the best ending I can hope for. Dying while checking on cattle, falling down in a field somewhere found by workers who'll shake their heads and say it's a shame, but at least he died doing what he loved. Except I don't love it. I don't love any of it. I loved it once maybe when I was young and building something, but now it's just empty routine, just a way to fill hours until there are no more hours to fill. One afternoon I'm driving back from checking the north pasture when I see Martha Henderson, that widow from town, walking on the sidewalk. She's carrying groceries, struggling with 2 heavy bags. I should stop and offer her a ride. I should help her with those bags. I should do what any decent person would do, but I drive past. I'm too afraid of rejection, too damaged to make even a simple gesture of kindness, too convinced that I don't deserve companionship, even in the most basic forms. I watch her in my rearview mirror getting smaller and smaller, and I hate myself for my cowardice. That night I can't stop thinking about Martha. She's probably 62 or 63, about my age, attractive in that mature, dignified way. I've heard she's been alone for 5 years since her husband died. 5 years of solitude, and she's probably lonely, probably would welcome some companionship. And I'm 66 with a failing heart and no time left, and I'm still too afraid to even offer a widow a ride home from the grocery store. What's wrong with me? What is fundamentally broken in my psyche that I can't perform the simplest acts of human connection? I know the answer, of course. 45 years of isolation and emotional shutdown have left me incapable of normal human interaction. I don't know how to talk to people about anything except farming. I don't know how to show interest in someone else's life. I don't know how to be vulnerable or open or any of the things that relationships require. I've spent so long building walls around myself that I can't tear them down now, even when I want to, even when I'm desperate for connection, even when I'm dying alone and have nothing to lose by trying. The weekend comes, and it's no different from weekdays. Saturday morning I'm up at 4:30 doing the same routine, checking on the same farm, living the same empty life. I drive into town around 10, vaguely thinking I'll get some groceries, though I don't need any. Really, I'm just desperate for any kind of human interaction, even the brief transactional kind you get at stores. The farmers' market is happening in the town square, full of people and families and life. I walk through slowly, looking at vegetables and baked goods I don't need, watching families shop together, couples holding hands, kids running around. Everyone seems to be part of something, connected to someone. Everyone except me. I see Martha Henderson at one of the stalls buying fresh flowers. She looks lovely, her hair done nicely, wearing a pretty summer dress. She's chatting with the vendor, smiling and laughing, clearly comfortable with social interaction in a way I've never been. I should go talk to her. I should apologize for not stopping yesterday when she needed help. I should introduce myself properly, ask her about her life, show some interest. I should be brave for once in my pathetic life. But I can't. I stand there frozen, watching her from across the market, and then I turn around and leave before she can see me. Another opportunity missed, another chance at connection avoided, another nail in the coffin of my lonely life. On the drive home, I have to pull over because the chest pain is so bad I can't focus on the road. I sit in my truck on the side of the highway, gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the pain to pass or for death to come. Either one is fine with me at this point. Cars pass by and nobody stops to check on me. Why would they? I'm just some old man sitting in a truck. I don't have a wife who'll worry when I don't come home. I don't have kids who'll call to check on me. I don't have friends who'll notice if I don't show up somewhere. I'm completely alone, and if I die right here in this truck, it might be hours or days before anyone realizes. But the pain passes, and I don't die. Not today anyway. I drive home to my empty house and I lie down on my couch and I stare at the ceiling, and I think about what a waste my life has been. 66 years on this earth, and what do I have to show for it? 6,000 acres that will be sold. Millions of dollars that will go to taxes and distant relatives who don't know me. Awards and recognition that will be forgotten as soon as I'm gone. And no love, no family, no connections, no memories with people who matter. No legacy that means anything. Just an empty life in an empty house on a farm that's too big. I'm 66 years old, the richest farmer in 3 counties, and the most miserable human being I know. That's my life. That's my achievement. That's my legacy. A cautionary tale about what happens when you choose wealth over love, when you mistake acquisition for accomplishment, when you're so afraid of being vulnerable that you end up alone. The cruelest part is that I can see so clearly now what I should have done differently, but it's too late to do anything about it. Clarity at 66 when you're dying is worse than blindness, because you have to live with the knowledge of how badly you failed and how easily it could have been different. The days continue to blur together, each one the same as the last. Wake up alone, work alone, eat alone, go to bed alone, repeat. The chest pains are constant now, a dull ache that occasionally spikes into something sharp and terrifying. I'm taking the maximum dosage of all my medications, and they're barely keeping me functional. I should go to the hospital, but I don't. What would they do? Run tests I can't afford emotionally to sit through? Admit me and keep me overnight with nobody visiting? Tell me I need to reduce stress and increase my support system when I have neither? No, thank you. I'd rather die at home, alone, the way I've lived. Jack is getting more insistent that I need to slow down, that I need medical attention, that I need help. One day he directly asks me if I have family, if there's someone he should call, someone who should know what's happening. I tell him there's nobody, that I'm alone, that when I die the farm will be sold and he'll need to find another job. He looks at me with something like horror, like he can't comprehend how someone could live 66 years and end up with nobody. And I don't blame him. I can't comprehend it either, and I'm the one who did it. That conversation with Jack seems to trigger something in him. The next day, his wife Maria shows up at the farm with a casserole. She says she heard I've been feeling poorly, thought I could use a home-cooked meal. It's the first time anyone has cooked for me in decades, and I'm so touched I almost start crying right there in front of her. She's kind and warm, stays and chats for a few minutes about nothing important, makes me promise I'll eat the casserole and not let it go to waste. After she leaves, I stand in my kitchen holding this casserole, this physical manifestation of someone caring, and I can't stop the tears. Someone cared enough to make me food. That simple act of kindness, something most people probably experience regularly, is so rare in my life that it breaks me. I eat Maria's casserole for dinner that night, and it's delicious. Real home cooking made with love and care. Each bite reminds me of what I've missed, of all the dinners I could have had with a wife who cooked for me, of all the family meals I could have shared. This one casserole is a glimpse into a parallel life, the life I should have lived, and it makes the reality of my actual life that much harder to bear. The next Sunday, Maria and Jack invite me to their house for dinner. Maria calls me directly, says they're having a family dinner and there's always room for one more. I'm so surprised by the invitation that I almost say yes. Almost. But then I think about sitting at their table surrounded by their family, being the lonely old bachelor who's clearly there out of pity, and I can't do it. I make up an excuse about not feeling well, about needing to rest. Maria sounds disappointed but says she understands. tells me the offer stands any time I want to take them up on it. After we hang up, I sit in my empty house and I hate myself for my cowardice. They offered me exactly what I've been desperate for, human connection and family warmth, and I said no, again, still always. But I know why I said no. It's not just cowardice. It's that sitting at their family dinner would force me to confront what I don't have, would make the emptiness of my life impossible to ignore. It's easier to stay in my empty house and pretend this is fine than to see up close what a real life looks like and understand how completely I've failed at creating one. So I stay home and heat up leftovers of Maria's casserole, and I eat alone like always. And I try not to think about what's happening at Jack and Maria's house, about the laughter and conversation and love that I'm missing. My health continues to decline. The chest pains are almost constant now. The shortness of breath makes even simple tasks difficult. I'm exhausted all the time, completely drained. One morning I wake up and can't get out of bed, don't have the energy to face another empty day. I lie there for hours staring at the ceiling, and I think about just staying here, just not getting up, just letting whatever's going to happen happen. Who would care? Who would even notice? But eventually I do get up, because what else is there to do? I drag myself through another day, going through the motions, pretending it matters. Jack takes one look at me and says I need to go to the hospital, that this has gone on long enough. I tell him I'm fine, but he doesn't believe me. He threatens to call an ambulance if I don't go voluntarily, so I agree to go to the emergency room, if only to get him off my back. The hospital is busy and loud, and I hate it immediately. They make me fill out forms, endless forms, asking about my medical history and my emergency contacts and who to call in case of an emergency. I leave the emergency contact section blank. There's nobody to call. The nurse processing my intake notices and asks if there's really nobody, and I say no, there's nobody. She gives me that pitying look I've come to know so well and moves on to the next question. They run tests, lots of tests, EKGs and blood work and chest x-rays and more. Hours of sitting in uncomfortable hospital beds waiting for results, staring at the walls, watching other patients with their families visiting and bringing them flowers and holding their hands. An old man in the bed across from me has what looks like his whole family there, kids and grandkids crowding around, bringing him balloons and get-well cards. He's smiling despite obviously being in pain, joking with his grandkids, telling stories. That's what I don't have, that's what I'll never have. Even in the hospital facing serious health problems, I'm alone while he's surrounded by love. The cardiologist comes to talk to me in the evening. She's young, probably 40 at most, professional and kind. She tells me my heart is in bad shape, that I've likely already had several small heart attacks, that a major one could happen at any time. She recommends immediate admission, more tests, possibly surgery. She asks about my home situation, whether I have help, whether there's someone who can help me manage my medications and recovery. I tell her I live alone, that I can manage. She looks skeptical and says we need to discuss this more, but she gets called away to another emergency before we can continue the conversation. I'm admitted overnight for observation, moved to a room with monitors hooked up to track my heart rhythm. It's late now, past visiting hours, and the hospital is quiet. Nurses come by periodically to check on me, but otherwise I'm alone. I lie in the dark hospital room and I think about dying here, alone in this sterile place, nobody holding my hand, nobody saying goodbye. Is that how it's going to end? Probably. And whose fault is that? Mine. Entirely mine. I had 45 years to build connections, to create family, to ensure I wouldn't end up like this. And I chose not to. I chose work over life every single day, and this is the result. Sleep doesn't come. I lie awake all night, listening to the beeping of monitors, the sounds of nurses in the hallway, the occasional cry of pain from another room. Around 3 in the morning, I hear a commotion in the hallway. Someone's dying, I think, and their family is here saying goodbye. I can hear crying, hear urgent voices, hear the sounds of medical staff rushing around, and then silence. Someone died tonight, someone who had family with them at the end, family who loved them enough to be here at 3 in the morning. That's how it should be. That's what a life well lived looks like at the end, and I'll never have it. The next morning, the cardiologist comes back with more test results. She's more serious now, more urgent. She says I need surgery soon, that my condition is critical, that I could die at any time without intervention. She talks about bypass surgery, about recovery time, about lifestyle changes I'll need to make. And then she asks again about my support system, about who will help me recover, who will drive me to follow-up appointments, who will make sure I'm taking my medications and not overdoing it. I tell her again that there's nobody, that I live alone, that I'll figure it out. She looks frustrated and sad and says that's not adequate, that I need support for recovery, that going home alone to a farm where I'll be tempted to work is dangerous. I tell her I appreciate her concern, but I'm checking myself out, that I need to get back to my farm. She tries to argue, but I'm stubborn, sign the papers releasing myself against medical advice, and leave before anyone can stop me. Jack picks me up from the hospital, Maria having sent him when he called to check on me. He's quiet on the drive back, clearly worried, clearly disapproving of my decision to leave. When we get to my house, he helps me inside, and then says he needs to talk to me. We sit in my living room, this enormous space that feels even more empty than usual after 2 days away, and Jack tells me I'm being foolish. He says I need help, that I can't keep living like this, that I'm going to die if I don't make changes. He offers to have Maria check on me daily, to help coordinate care, to do whatever they can. And I'm touched, truly touched, but I also know it's not enough. What I need isn't daily check-ins from employees. What I need is family. What I need is love. What I need is the life I didn't build. And you can't fix 45 years of mistakes with good intentions and casseroles. I thank Jack for his concern and tell him I'll be fine, that I'll take it easy, that I'll follow the doctor's orders. He doesn't believe me, but what can he do? He's my employee, not my family. He leaves reluctantly, and I'm alone again in my big empty house, and it feels like coming back to a tomb. This is where I'll die. Probably soon. Probably alone. And there's a certain justice in that, I suppose. You die how you lived, and I lived alone. The next few weeks are a fog of pain and medication, and forcing myself to rest when every instinct tells me to work. Jack and Maria check on me regularly, bringing food and making sure I'm taking my medications. Their kindness is overwhelming and heartbreaking in equal measure. It shows me what I could have had if I'd let people in, if I'd built relationships, if I'd chosen differently. But it also highlights how empty my life is, that the only people who care if I live or die are employees who feel obligated. One day, Maria brings her youngest grandchild with her, a little boy about 4 years old. He's curious and energetic, running around my living room looking at everything. He finds my mother's photo album and brings it to me, asks who the people in the pictures are. I show him pictures of me as a child, of my parents when they were young, and he listens with that total absorption that children have. He asks if I have grandchildren, and I say no. He asks why not, and I don't know what to say. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that you wasted your life, that you chose wrong every day for decades, that you're dying alone as punishment for your mistakes? I tell him I never got married, never had kids. He looks confused and asks why not, as if it's the most natural thing in the world to get married and have kids, which it is. I tell him I was too busy working. He thinks about this for a moment and then says, "That's sad. Everyone should have a family." Out of the mouths of babes. This 4-year-old child understands what I didn't figure out until I was 66 and dying. Everyone should have a family. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. It's basic human truth. And I ignored it for 45 years. After Maria and her grandson leave, I sit in my living room holding that photo album and I cry. Deep, racking sobs that hurt my damaged heart, but I can't stop them. I cry for the little boy in these photos who became the broken man I am now. I cry for my mother who died hoping I'd give her grandchildren. I cry for all the women I rejected. I cry for the children who were never born. I cry for the family that never existed. I cry for the grandchildren I'll never have. I cry for 45 years of choosing wrong, and when I'm done crying, when there are no tears left, I'm still alone in my empty house with my failing heart, and crying hasn't changed anything. That night, I do something I haven't done in years. I get down on my knees and I pray. I don't know if God is listening. Don't know if there's anyone out there who cares about a lonely old fool who wasted his life. But I pray anyway. I pray for forgiveness for all the ways I've failed. I pray for peace in whatever time I have left. I pray that when I die it'll be quick and not too painful. I pray that maybe in whatever comes after, I'll get another chance to do it right. And then I pray for Sarah and Jennifer and Rachel, that they're happy, that their lives turned out well, that they don't think about the lonely farmer who rejected them. I try to get up and realize I can't. My knees have locked from kneeling too long, my body too weak to lift itself. I'm stuck on my knees in my empty bedroom at 66 years old, unable to stand, nobody here to help me. This is what my life has become. This is the reality of choosing isolation. I eventually managed to crawl to the bed and pull myself up, exhausted and humiliated. This is how I'll die, I think. Alone and unable to care for myself, and too stubborn to ask for help even when I desperately need it. I make it through the night, but barely. The chest pain is constant now, sharp and terrifying. Every breath is an effort. I know I should call for help, should go back to the hospital, should do something. But what's the point? The doctor was clear. My heart is failing. Surgery might help, but I'd need support during recovery, need people to help me, need a reason to fight through the pain and difficulty, and I don't have any of that. I don't have support or people or reasons. All I have is a 6,000-acre farm that means nothing and a 6-bedroom house that's empty. Morning comes and I'm still alive, though I almost wish I wasn't. Jack arrives for work and immediately knows something's wrong. He calls Maria, and within an hour I'm back in the hospital, this time too weak to resist. The doctors are frustrated with me, say I should never have left, that I've made things worse by not following their recommendations. They run more tests and the results are worse than before. The cardiologist sits me down and tells me I need immediate surgery, that without it, I'll likely die within weeks. With it, I might have a few more years. Maybe. She asks again about support for recovery. She says the surgery is serious, that I'll need at least 6 weeks of help afterward, that I can't be alone. I tell her I don't have anyone. She says that's not acceptable, that we need to find resources, social services, home health care, something. I tell her to do whatever she thinks is necessary. The truth is, I don't care. Surgery might give me a few more years of lonely existence in my empty house. Death will end it all. Either way, I end up alone. At least death has the mercy of finality. They schedule the surgery for the next week, giving me time to get my affairs in order, as they put it. Affairs. What affairs? I call my lawyer and update my will, confirming that everything goes to distant cousins I've never met and various charities. I call Jack and tell him what's happening, ask him to keep the farm running while I'm in surgery and recovering. I call Maria and thank her for all her kindness, apologize for being such a burden. She cries on the phone and says, I'm not a burden, says she wishes I'd let them help more. But how can they help? They can't give me the 45 years I wasted. They can't give me the family I never built. They can give me casseroles and check-ins, and while I'm grateful, it's not enough to fill the void I created. The night before surgery, I'm alone in my hospital room thinking about everything. If I die on the operating table tomorrow, this is it. This is the end. 66 years on Earth, and what do I have to show for it? 6,000 acres that will be sold, millions of dollars that will be dispersed, a big empty house that will be demolished or sold, and no one who'll truly mourn me. Jack and Maria will be sad, but they barely know me. They're kind people who feel sorry for the lonely old farmer, but I'm not family to them. I'm not anyone's family. I'm just a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when you choose wrong. I think about Sarah and Jennifer and Rachel, wonder if they ever think about me, wonder if they dodged a bullet by my rejecting them, or if they sometimes wonder what if. I think about my mother and how disappointed she'd be in how I turned out. I think about my father and realize I became exactly what he was, a lonely man who died with nothing but work. I think about all the children who were never born, all the grandchildren who will never exist, all the family dinners and holidays and celebrations that will never happen. I think about 66 years of life and how I squandered every moment of it. The surgery is scheduled for early morning. They'll crack open my chest, work on my heart, try to repair the damage I've done through decades of stress and poor choices and emotional emptiness. If I survive, I'll wake up in recovery, alone, nobody waiting to see if I made it. If I die, they'll call my lawyer and Jack, inform them, start the process of disposing of my estate. Either way, I'm alone. That's my truth. That's my reality. That's what I built through 45 years of choosing work over life, isolation over connection, fear over love. As they wheel me toward the operating room, I'm asked if there's anyone they should call, anyone who should be notified about the surgery outcome. I say no. There's nobody. The nurse looks sad, but moves on. They put me under, and my last thought is that if I don't wake up, at least the pain will be over. At least the regret will end. At least I won't have to face any more empty days in my empty house living my empty life. And maybe that's the best I can hope for. Not a good ending, but an ending nonetheless. I wake up, the surgery worked. I'm alive, and I'm still alone. Nothing has changed, except now I have a scar on my chest to match the scars on my heart. They keep me in the hospital for a week, monitoring my recovery, managing my pain. Jack and Maria visit every day, bringing news from the farm, bringing food, bringing kindness I don't deserve. The doctors are pleased with my physical recovery but worried about my emotional state. They talk about depression, about the importance of will to live, about giving myself reasons to fight through the difficult recovery ahead. But I don't have reasons. I just have more empty days ahead of me. When they discharge me, they arrange for home health care. A nurse who'll visit daily to check on me, help with medications, make sure I'm recovering properly. It's humiliating, having a stranger come to my house to care for me because I have nobody else. But it's also what I deserve. This is the life I built. This is the consequence of 45 years of choosing wrong. I'm the richest farmer in 3 counties and the loneliest man I know. I survived surgery, but I'm still dying. Just slower now. Dying of loneliness, dying of regret, dying of a lifetime of mistakes that can't be fixed. My 6-bedroom house is still empty. My kitchen table still seats only one. My bed still has an unused side. My life is still meaningless despite the extra years the surgery might have bought me. Because time without connection, life without love, success without family, it's all just extended dying. And I'm so tired of dying alone. That's my story. That's my warning. I'm the richest farmer in the region and the most solitary, and that combination isn't success. It's the saddest failure there is. I built an empire and destroyed my chance at happiness. I won at business and lost at life. And now I'm 66 years old, recovering from heart surgery, alone in a house too big with more money than I need and less love than anyone should have to endure. That's what 45 years of choosing wrong looks like. That's what happens when you confuse wealth with worth, when you mistake isolation for independence, when you're too afraid to be vulnerable until it's too late to matter. This is my ending. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free, and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. Alive but not living. Breathing but not alive. Existing but not mattering. The richest, loneliest man in 3 counties, dying slowly in an empty house. A cautionary tale for anyone wise enough to learn from my mistakes. Choose love over land. Choose family over fortune. Choose life over work. Because at the end, when your heart is failing and your time is running out, the only thing that matters is who loves you and who you love. And I have nobody. Nobody at all. And that's the saddest ending there is.
We raise these cattle with care, respecting the old ways and the new.